Wait, Saw is a good franchise? It always has been.
With the release of Saw X, or Saw X, whatever you really want to call it, the most important part of all of this is that Lionsgate and Twisted Pictures have finally relented after 13 years and realized that the most effective type of brand recognition is showcasing the strongest points of your IP. Not just a half-hearted reboot.
I speak for the dead.
Or some kind of star-studded spin-off film.
Who the fuck are you? Who the fuck am I? I'm the director, Shaka Luther King, that's who the fuck I am.
At least as far as the audience is concerned, as well as some of the critics, the best parts of this series are hidden away almost 20 years in the past, back when all the proper fixins of what eventually became the series' so-called legacy were still intact. And please don't get me wrong, if there is one specific thing that you should understand about this review and my feelings towards Saw X as an installment in one of my favorite franchises ever, it's that this 10th entry is well worth the watch, and I will certainly be seeing it multiple times in the theaters, because despite anything negative that I could say about it, the good certainly outweighs the bad.
That was a greatest night in the history of television. Okay.
With that being said, one of the things that I really want to discuss about this sequel is the uncharacteristically generous response from the critics, especially since this film in particular positioned itself to stoke the artistic egos of the otherwise cynical gatekeeping individuals that have cried foul over this series' success since 2004, by simply having 20 or so minutes of character work at the opening of the movie instead of jumping into some kind of trap or picking up directly where the last film ended. It's weird to think that the only thing a Saw film ever needed to do in order to be considered a real movie is just to give a few minutes of screen time for the critics to justify their emotional investment and sympathize with the protagonists of any of the preceding 9 films. As if John Kramer's backstory wasn't already compelling enough as a cancer patient that lost his unborn child due to the cruelties of the world around him. And that's not even to mention the other focal characters that appear throughout this entire franchise.
Just come with me.
I can't.
What you can't do is save everyone.
Why are you so desperate to get your son back? Because he's my son. I've tried to help you, Amanda.
So help me! Fix me! Fix me, motherfucker! I'm standing right here!
I can't.
No, Brett!
You killed my father, you motherfucker!
Diary of a Wimpy Kid, Roderick Rules.
And I guess just to be fair to critics, it is possible that a lot of these critics grew up with the Saw franchise and they're simply falling into this film's carefully crafted nostalgia trap, because in reality, and I just have to be honest, no matter how high the reviews are, I don't think that there's anything particularly extraordinary about Saw X as a movie. But as a sequel to a long-running horror franchise, I think this one is really special. This is a film that is intrinsically tied to the films that came before it, not only in a narrative sense, but also a visual one as well. Everything from the lighting, the filters, the editing style, the gritty set design, and even the old school red gears from the Lionsgate logo, Saw X desperately wants its audience to remember the good old days when the franchise rolled over every spooky season with a guaranteed $30 million opening and a promise that any remaining questions would be answered in next year's inevitable installment. And I have to say, if you look at this film with just those rose-colored glasses and no other discernible type of critique, it's really hard not to get just a little bit emotional at what you're seeing on screen. Maybe it was just something you had to be there for or actively paying attention to, but 2004 to 2010 was a really good stretch for fans of this series. One that no other franchise has been able to compete with since. So yes, the technicality of this film and how it presents itself as just a normal sequel that would have been made during that time period, it's something truly special, and it really helps every fan or soon-to-be fan or anybody who's ever loved this series literally feel like they're back at home and 20 years younger. But anyway, just stepping back a little from the technical aspects of this film, let's move on to the story of it all. And as I already stated before, make no mistake about it, Saw X is a special sequel for this series because it's a film that finds a perfect balance of being a standalone thriller that allows for a deeper dive into the relationship of the series' two best characters, John Kramer and Amanda Young, while also being an easily digestible entry for the people who might have fallen off along the way. And even though keeping the franchise's continuity intact resulted in Tobin Bell and Shawnee Smith playing their characters looking 20 years older than their original outings, and with less than convincing wigs, but none of that really matters when the chemistry between them seems to be just as potent as it was back in 2006 with the release of Saw 3. Plus, the time placement of this film certainly allows for a fuller understanding of not only their characters individually, but the nature of their relationship as it evolves from the events of the first film all the way to the third.
Game over.
At this point, I don't think it's a real spoiler to tell you that Amanda's character is an emotional wreck throughout the entire series. But as a longtime fan of this series, it is really fun to see her leaning so much on John and still trying to find strength to believe in his vision, almost in the exact opposite of Saw 3's divisive ending. If there's going to be a new sequel after this film's relative success, I would love to see more of her character's journey during the events of Saw 1 to Saw 3. And as far as the rest of the film and cast go, I think you really have to hand it to Sonone Makodi Lund, whose portrayal of Cecilia really steals the film throughout.
This bitch, oh no. This bitch had the nerve, the audacity to touch my motherfucking hair. Do not touch my hair. No.
Seriously though, despite 10 films and nearly 20 years of content, this franchise has never really had a main trap victim quite like Cecilia. And without going directly into spoiler territory, I can easily see her character rising the ranks into fan favorite territory here in the next few weeks. But you know what? At the end of the day, I'm not entirely sure that Saw X will be able to recruit any new fans into devoted supporters of the franchise, not even through its mostly self-contained story. But this movie wasn't made to do that. The last two movies tried to do that, and they didn't fare too well for their respective releases. Instead, this movie was meant to appease the longtime fans of the property while trying to bring back the people who might have fallen off along the way. And at least in that respect, I'm not entirely sure I've seen any horror series, or any franchise of any genre for that matter, pull off this type of reawakening this many installments in. It's actually pretty impressive when you think about it.
Who wants a Saw sequel at 3 in the morning?
Anyway, I wanted to leave it there because even though I still have a lot to say about this film, I think I would rather just cover that in future uploads instead of putting it all into one massive video that I'm going to have to edit and put out there as soon as possible. Plus, that would give me a little time to think about the things I want to talk about for this film as well as any other future films in the series, and we can discuss those there and maybe put it all into one big video about Saw X. I'm not entirely sure. But with that being said, Saw X is definitely a return to form for this franchise, especially after the last 2 or 3 entries. My gut reaction is that it's definitely in the top 5 of the series, and I might go as high as the top 3 if it holds up on rewatches. My only suggestion for the people who might be going into this film blind, that is, you've never seen a Saw film before, just don't do it. It's not that this film can't stand on its own 2 legs. It's just that this film kind of kneecaps some of the more interesting twists and turns and setups and story beats from the original, let's call them 7 films. And if you are lucky enough to have never seen a Saw movie before, or cultural osmosis hasn't already seeped into your subconscious, you'd be advised to see, at the very least, the first 4 films in the series before going to see Saw X. Because the producers might believe that this is the official Saw 2, but I can't imagine watching this film directly after the first unless you've already seen the other 9 that came before it. But that's kind of the last note there. I'm going to go now, but if you've had any appreciation for the Saw films in the past, you might have dropped off before, or anything of that matter, I honestly think that you should give this one a chance because it will put you back in those nostalgia feels of the early 2000s, and like I said earlier, It's going to make you feel 20 years younger, and that's a breath of fresh air, especially going to the cinema and just wanting to zone out and escape into nostalgia. But that's just my take.
The KRW Network. The KRW Network.